Hello class. Today we're going to talk about similarity and dilations. So this is an extension to the activity that we did in class with your group. The essential question that we're going to have to ask ourselves is how can we determine if two closed regular polygons are similar through dilations? So before we begin, we need to talk about the different vocabulary that is important to understanding this concept. So our first question is going to be, what important vocab words do we need? Okay, so I'm going to choose a different color for our actual notes. So the first one is going to be ratio. And we can say that a ratio is a representation to compare two objects. So like we did in class, an example, all of my examples are going to be in pink. We have 6/12 and 1/2 is another ratio, or 5/2 or 5/2. Okay, another important definition that you guys need to know before moving on is what proportional means. So if something is proportional, then we know that the two objects are related to one another through ratios. And then for our next one, it's going to be dilation. For something to be a dilation, we have a non-rigid motion, it's like a straight line, and the non-rigid motion is carried to a center point. In our activity, we called this R. Okay, so for example, and then you guys saw how it got bigger. This is your pre-image. This is your image. You can tell that your image got bigger than your pre-image, so it was dilated. Okay, so the next one that we're going to ask or need to know is what scale factor means, or also known as the K-factor. So a scale factor and K-factor are similar in the sense that it increases the pre-image by a constant factor, which you can kind of think of it as either multiplication or division. So say if your scale factor is 2, then you'd increase it by 2, or say if it's you want to decrease it by a half, you can either multiply it by a half or divide it by 2. So then now that we have all of these basic definitions here for us, we can move on, and our next definition that we need to consider is what is similarity. So similarity is corresponding angles are congruent and corresponding sides are congruent as well. And they're congruent. The sides can also be in proportion to one another, so they're proportional. Another thing that they can be is, or Another way that they can be similar is through the scale factor or K factor that we just defined. Okay, and then one other thing that we have to think about is ratio. So they can also be similar through ratios of the sides. Okay, so now we have our various definitions. And we're going to go ahead and ask some questions. So the first question that we need to look into, how to show objects are similar through dilation. Okay? So to answer this question, we actually have a few different sub-questions. And one of the first things that we're going to look into is how you can look into the vertices. Okay, so if we're looking at the vertices, you can look at the points, and you need to look at the center point, which is 0, 0. And then you have your next point of one of your vertices as x, y. And it's going to be dilated. And for the dilation, it's going to go by a scale factor of k. So this is going to be your pre-image. This will be your pre-image. And this is your image. Okay? And then another thing that we need to know is what it kind of looks like. So we have the center R, and then we have this image here. And then if we continue these lines, we'll see our image. And this is not very well drawn, but you can see that your pre-image and your image got bigger, and it grew by a scale factor of k. Okay, so the next thing that we need to look into is using lines of dilation, which I just kind of showed an example of that. But looking back at our example that we have up here, there's something we need to note. In addition to our blue question there, I'm going to put this as a sub-question in this lighter blue. And how, so some ways is that through corresponding sides are parallel. Okay, so for example, we have this triangle here, and then our next triangle might be here, but you'll notice that these lines right here are parallel to one another. So that's what it's getting at. And then also, what you guys should have known or recognized is that these corresponding angles here are congruent. Okay? So the corresponding, yeah, that's a right angle. These corresponding angles are congruent. So, okay, so then moving on from there, whenever we have the center of dilation, so say in this case our center of dilation was right here, we have to take into consideration how this, where the location of your center of dilation can affect how the image is dilated. So the question we're going to ask ourselves is, what happens to the dilation when the point is 1, inside? I'm going to ask 3 little sub-questions. Inside the shape. 2, put it down a line. Oh, sorry, that's inside the shape. This is outside the shape, and 3 on this shape, or let's say polygon. Keep our notes consistent. Okay, so you'll notice over here, since I numbered those, I'm going to go ahead and number our notes. So the first one to touch that, whenever it is in the center of the shape, the image will be centered with the pre-image. Okay, so then 2, it's going to be shifted is the word we will use. And if the point, so specifically, if the point, actually we should not use point, let's use center. Center is to the right, the image shifts left. And if center is to the left, the image shifts right. So for example, our center's here. We're going to draw our pre-image over here. We take it by K factor. Our image then will go here, and you can draw your lines of dilation. Okay? And then the next thing that we kind of need to know is the third one, which is if it's on this shape, then if it's on the shape, then it's going to share one corresponding side length. Or not length, just side. And then the last thing that you guys kind of need to consider is your summary. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and just briefly state the procedure that you guys need to remember when creating your summary. So the first thing is read notes and highlight 5 words/phrases that are the most important. The second thing you guys need to remember when writing a summary is to construct a summary that answers the essential question that that uses the highlighted parts, so the highlighted words or phrases. And then the third one is to post your summary on Edmodo. And then if you post it on there, you will receive Class Dojo points.